If you haven't seen the first episode plot video, click the link in the description to watch it. The second episode begins in Winterfell. Gendry and Tormund tell everyone that the wall has fallen and the Night's Watch has been destroyed. Tormund also tells them that the Night King rides dead Viserion and that they are severely fucked. Bran Stark confirms their story and tells them that the Night King is on his way to Winterfell. Jon Snow says that they have no time to lose and asks Maester Wolkan to inform all of their banners to prepare themselves for a war against the army of the dead. After having to process a lot of new information about his true identity, Jon Snow goes to the crypts to visit his mother, Lyanna, and his uncle, Ned Stark. Daenerys notices that there's something wrong with Jon and finds him in the crypts. She asks Jon what's wrong with him. Jon tells her that Jon Snow isn't even his real name. He says that Jon Snow is a lie that people have made him believe all his life. Daenerys is confused and asks Jon for clarification, but Jon walks away. Daenerys notices that Jon is behaving strangely towards her. Daenerys walks out of the crypts, which Jorah sees. He asks her what happened down in the crypts. Daenerys answers that she doesn't know what's up with Jon. She tells Jorah that Jon is hiding something from her. She also says that she's not feeling very well lately. Jorah proposes to have her examined by Maester Wolkan. In King's Landing, Qyburn enters Cersei's chambers. He asks her to rest because of the miscarriage she just had. Cersei answers that there's no time for that and doesn't want to talk about it. Qyburn leaves her chambers. Cersei watches the snow fall in King's Landing from her room's window. The next scene is Jaime, riding his horse in snow. He and Bronn arrive in River Run. They discover that the Tullys are laying siege to River Run. Jaime meets with Lord Edmure. Edmure tells Jaime that he should have him in chains, but Jaime responds that he isn't here to argue about the damned castle. He asks Edmure to help his niece and nephew in the Great War. He also promises to give River Run back to the Tullys, since it doesn't matter any longer who's holding the castle. Edmure agrees, not for Jaime, but for his family. In Winterfell, most of the House Stark's bannermen and Daenerys' army have arrived. Among them is Howland Reed. He arrived with his army and Mura Reed by his side. Arya too receives a visitor. He seems to be an ordinary bannerman from House Kerwin. But then he removes his face and is shown to be Jaqen H'ghar. Arya is surprised to see him. Jaqen tells Arya that the many-faced god requires another death, a name to be crossed off her list. He reveals it to be the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, Cersei Lannister. What better servant of the many-faced god than Arya Stark to kill Cersei Lannister? He gives a vial of poison to Arya and leaves. Actually, this is what Euron Greyjoy was talking about in the first episode. He has hired the Faceless Man to assassinate Cersei, so he can sit on the Iron Throne. In Winterfell, Jon Snow seizes an opportunity to talk with Howland Reed. He asks Howland to confirm Bran's story, but Howland refuses to acknowledge this at all. Jon Snow pleads him to tell the truth. Since Robert Baratheon isn't alive any longer, there's no point in lying anymore. Howland then confirms that Ned was carrying Lyanna's child when he came out of the Tower of Joy. Howland promised Ned to always keep this a secret. Knowing that the army of the dead will be upon them very soon, Tyrion, Jon, Sansa, Arya, Brienne, Podrick, Davos, Tormund, Gendry, Varys, Jorah, Theon, the Hound, Grey Worm, Sam and the Stark bannermen discuss their strategy. This is when they get news that the last hearth has been attacked and destroyed by the army of the dead, and that Ned Ummer didn't make it out alive. Tyrion speaks for Daenerys, who's absent due to illness. He comes forward with a plan to defend the north. He proposes that the free folk, Dothraki and the Unsullied, attack the Whites with dragon glass weapons from the Dreadfort, since that's where they are heading to first. From Dreadfort, they will retreat to Winterfell, and on their way to Winterfell, the dragons will set the army of the dead afire. House Stark's bannermen and the Knights of the Vale will fight weakened forces at the battlefield of Winterfell. Jon wants Brienne and Podrick to take Sansa, Arya, and Bran to the Eyrie. Arya doesn't want to go, and claims that she's stronger than most men and they need her in the war to come. Jon insists that he doesn't want that. Jorah also wants to fight alongside House Mormont, but Lyanna reminds him that he betrayed his house. Varys tells them that he has just received word from King's Landing Supposedly, Queen Cersei has bought a great army of sellswords and Euron Greyjoy has taken Storm's End to install the army there. Meanwhile, Missandei visits Daenerys in her chambers. Daenerys tells Missandei that Maester Wolkan examined her, and he has confirmed that she's pregnant. Missandei asks why she isn't happy then. Daenerys feels that Jon has changed towards her, and she doesn't understand why. The free folk, the Dothraki and the Unsullied prepare to leave Winterfell. Jon asks Daenerys that, why didn't she attend the meeting, but Daenerys doesn't reply. Meera goes to say goodbye to Bran in the Godswood. This is when Bran starts to behave very strangely. He asks Meera to warn the others that the army of the dead is here. Jon is saying goodbye to Sansa when Meera runs to warn the others. A huge winter storm approaches Winterfell. Chaos erupts. Outside the castle, the North and Daenerys' army have gathered to face the Night King's army. Jon orders Sansa, Arya, and Daenerys to stay inside Winterfell. He promises them that Winterfell will not fall. Varys, Tyrion, Samwell, Gilly, Lyanna and Missandei also remain inside Winterfell. Arya doesn't want to stay inside, but obeys Jon's command anyway. Sansa asks Meera to get Bran inside. This is when the army of the dead invades the battlefield of Winterfell. Dothraki face the army of the dead first, and many of them are taken out quite easily. Ghost fights with Jon, and is killed saving him from a White Walker. Inside Winterfell, Daenerys is frustrated that she can't do anything, and she should fly Drogon to destroy the dead. Missandei says that it's not wise to join the fight while she's pregnant. The news of her pregnancy surprises Sansa, Tyrion, and Varys. Sam tries to console Gilly and little Sam. In the battlefield, Drogon attacks the dead and takes out a big chunk of their army, but also kills some of the Northerners in the process. The White Walkers also enter the battlefield with the Night King flying dead Viserion above them. Viserion starts burning the Northerner army, and kills Lord Glover and Halland Reed. Tormund leads the Free Folk and fights, but is killed by Drogon's fire. Drogon also manages to kill a dead giant. Meera asks Bran to leave the Godswood, but he tells her he has to help Jon. Bran tries to warg into Rhaegal. Meera warns Bran that it's too dangerous. In the battlefield, Jon and Daenerys' army is diminishing greatly since the dead just keep coming. White Walkers try to invade Winterfell. Grey Worm faces two White Walkers, and is able to take out one of them with his dragonglass spear. The other White Walker kills him. Brienne guards the castle together with Podrick, Jorah, and Gendry. Podrick is killed off by a group of Whites, which makes Brienne go psycho, and she takes out one of the White Walkers with Oathkeeper. Meera urges Bran to give up and get inside, but Bran doesn't. He wants Meera to leave instead and get inside the castle. Meera answers that she will stay with him until the end. This is when Jaime and the Tully forces come to the North's aid right in time. Bran wargs into Rhaegal and makes him fight Viserion. Rhaegal tries to bite Viserion in the neck, but gets injured during process. Rhaegal starts to breathe fire on Viserion. They both keep fighting and get seriously injured. In Godswood, White Walkers come for Bran, and Meera gets killed defending him. White Walkers then stab Bran to death, which makes Rhaegal fall to the ground and be stabbed to death by Whites. The army of the dead starts to diminish. We see Jaime commanding his men and fighting the remaining dead alongside Bronn. Jon fights alongside the Hound and Davos. The Hound fights like a boss and kills many Whites. When Jon notices that the Night King's army is retreating, he commands everyone to leave the Winterfell. The Knights of the Vale, Sansa, and Brienne leave for the Eyrie. Arya, the Hound, Jaime, Bronn, Edmure, Tully, and Lannister forces retreat to River Run. Jon, Davos, Tyrion, Varys, Missandei, Jorah, Samwell and the remaining Unsullied and Dothraki forces travel south. Lyanna Mormont and her men retreat to the Bear Island. The last scene in this episode is Jon and Daenerys on Drogon's back setting all the dead on fire, including dead Rhaegal. Both sides suffered great losses in this fight. Major characters who die in this episode are Grey Worm, Tormund, Podrick, Meera, Bran, Rhaegal, Lord Glover and Halland Reed. To receive leaks of the next Season 8 episodes in your newsfeed, hit the subscribe button below. If you like this video, please share it.